The crystal chandeliers of Willowbrook Estate cast dancing shadows across the marble floors as 40 members of the Morrison family gathered to celebrate my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. The grand ballroom had been transformed into an elegant dining space, with round tables draped in ivory linens and centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath. This was the same estate where my grandparents had hosted legendary parties in the 1960s, where 3 generations of Morrisons had celebrated milestones and built memories. I sat at table 7, strategically positioned near the back where I could observe without drawing attention. For the past 8 years, I had perfected the art of fading into the background at family events. While my cousins commanded attention with stories of their latest promotions and acquisitions, I remained the family enigma who somehow never quite measured up to Morrison standards. "Ladies and gentlemen," my cousin Bradley announced from the head table, his voice carrying across the ballroom with the confidence of someone born into privilege. At 35, Bradley was everything the Morrison family valued: Harvard MBA, senior partner at Morrison and Associates Investment Banking, married to old money, father to children who attended the same elite prep schools our family had attended for generations. Tonight we celebrate not just Richard and Elizabeth's marriage, but 30 years of building something extraordinary together, Bradley continued. Dad and Mom have created a legacy that spans multiple businesses, charitable foundations and real estate holdings across 3 states. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. My parents beamed from their seats at the head table, Mom resplendent in her designer gown, Dad distinguished in his custom tuxedo. They had indeed built something remarkable. Morrison Holdings now controlled a diversified portfolio worth over $800 million, from commercial real estate to tech investments to the pharmaceutical company that had made our family fortune. Our family has always believed in traditional values, Bradley gestured grandly. Hard work, strategic thinking, building generational wealth through proven business principles. These values have guided us through decades of success. I noticed several family members glancing in my direction, and my stomach tightened as I recognized the setup for what was about to come. Most of our younger generation has embraced these values beautifully, Bradley continued. Cousin Amanda runs our Southeast division, generating $50 million in annual revenue. Cousin Michael just closed the largest pharmaceutical deal in company history. Cousin Sarah's law practice serves half the Fortune 500 companies in our region. The applause grew more pointed and I felt the familiar weight of family expectations pressing down on me. At 29 I was the Morrison family's great disappointment. The granddaughter who had turned down a guaranteed position at Morrison Holdings to pursue what my family generously called that environmental thing. But tonight I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Bradley's tone shifted, becoming more serious. We have a family member who has chosen a very different path. The conversations at surrounding tables began to quiet as Bradley's speech took on the tone of a boardroom intervention. I could feel 40 pairs of eyes turning toward my table. For 8 years I had maintained an elaborate facade. I lived in a converted warehouse in the industrial district, drove a hybrid vehicle covered in environmental advocacy stickers, and wore second-hand clothes to family events. I volunteered at homeless shelters, organized community gardens, and whenever family asked about work, I spoke vaguely about sustainability consulting and renewable energy projects. What they didn't know was that I was the founder and CEO of Horizon Environmental Solutions, a green technology empire that had quietly revolutionized how corporations approached environmental sustainability. We weren't just consultants, we were the architects behind the largest renewable energy installations in North America, the designers of carbon capture systems that had removed millions of tons of CO2 from the atmosphere, and the creators of waste-to-energy technologies that were transforming entire cities. But tonight, like every family gathering, I was just Samantha the disappointment. Uncle David, Dad's younger brother and the family's unofficial spokesman for traditional values, seized the moment to stand up. At 58, Uncle David embodied everything the Morrison family respected about old-school business success. He owned the largest commercial real estate firm in the region, had served on corporate boards for 3 decades, and never let anyone forget that he turned a $100,000 inheritance into a $200 million fortune. Bradley's being diplomatic, Uncle David announced, his voice carrying easily across the ballroom. But I think this anniversary celebration is the perfect time for some honest family conversation. My heart sank. Uncle David was notorious for his blunt assessments and public confrontations. He had built his reputation on making hard decisions and telling uncomfortable truths, regardless of the social setting. "We're here celebrating Richard and Elizabeth's incredible achievements," Uncle David continued, "but we can't ignore the fact that their youngest daughter has been a consistent source of disappointment for this family." The ballroom fell silent. Even the waitstaff seemed to pause in their movements as Uncle David prepared to deliver what I realized was going to be a devastating public evaluation. Samantha Morrison, Uncle David gestured toward me dramatically, had every advantage this family could provide. Private school education, full scholarship to Stanford, guaranteed positions at multiple Morrison companies, access to the most powerful business networks in the country. I maintained my practiced calm while internally calculating the carbon footprint of the private jets that had brought various family members to tonight's celebration. It was a meditation technique I'd developed to survive these gatherings. Instead, Uncle David's voice grew more pointed. She chose to throw it all away to become what can only be described as a professional activist. Living in some warehouse, driving around in that ridiculous hybrid car, spending her time on projects that generate no measurable value. Several family members nodded in agreement. Cousin Amanda whispered something to her husband that made him chuckle. Uncle Michael raised his wine glass as if toasting Uncle David's assessment. "The truth is," Uncle David continued, his voice now carrying to every corner of the ballroom, "Samantha represents everything that's wrong with her generation. This idea that you can build a meaningful life around feelings and causes instead of results and profits. This notion that somehow being poor and idealistic is more noble than creating wealth and jobs." The intervention was gaining momentum, and I could see that Uncle David was building toward something even more devastating. "So I'm going to say what everyone in this family has been thinking for 8 years. Uncle David raised his voice to ensure maximum impact. "She'll never amount to anything. She's 30 years old, living like a college student, contributing nothing to society while the rest of us build real businesses and create real value." The applause that followed was enthusiastic. Uncle David had given voice to what many family members had apparently been thinking for years. Even some of the catering staff were watching the scene unfold, drawn by the drama of a family confrontation playing out in real time. "Which brings me to my point," Uncle David continued. "This family has always taken care of its members, even the ones who make poor choices. But there comes a time when enablement becomes harmful. Samantha needs to face reality." He turned to address me directly. "I'm offering you one final opportunity to join the real world. Entry-level position at Morrison Holdings, $75,000 starting salary, full benefits, and the chance to learn how actual business works. But this environmental fantasy has to end." The room held its breath, waiting for my response to Uncle David's ultimatum. 40 family members, catering staff, and even the string quartet had stopped to watch this moment unfold. That's when I calmly reached into my purse and pulled out a leather portfolio containing property documents. The silence deepened as I placed the folder on the white tablecloth and opened it to reveal the deed to Willowbrook Estate. The document was official, stamped, and dated 6 months earlier. It clearly stated that the property had been purchased by Horizon Environmental Solutions for $12.8 million in cash. Uncle David's wine glass stopped halfway to his lips. His eyes focused on the document, and I watched his face change from confidence to confusion to growing shock. "Actually," I said quietly, "I own this entire estate now." The words seemed to echo in the suddenly silent ballroom. Uncle David leaned forward to read the deed more carefully, his fork dropping from his other hand and clattering against his plate. "This can't be right," he stammered. "Samantha, this document says you purchased Willowbrook Estate for nearly $13 million. "That's correct," I confirmed calmly. "Horizon Environmental Solutions acquired the property 6 months ago. We're converting it into a demonstration center for sustainable living technologies." The silence spread outward from our table like ripples in a pond. Family members at nearby tables were leaning in to see what had caused such a dramatic reaction from Uncle David. Cousin Bradley found his voice first. "Samantha, I don't understand. How could you possibly afford to buy Willowbrook Estate?" I opened the portfolio to reveal additional documents, corporate filings, financial statements, and acquisition records that painted a very different picture of my life than the one my family had constructed. Horizon Environmental Solutions is the largest renewable energy consulting firm in North America, I explained. We've designed and implemented sustainability systems for over 300 Fortune 500 companies. Our carbon capture technology is being used by major oil companies to offset their environmental impact. Our waste-to-energy systems are powering entire cities. Dad was staring at the documents with an expression I'd never seen before. Samantha, these financial statements show annual revenue of $2.3 billion. Last year was particularly strong, I acknowledged. We completed the largest solar installation project in U.S. history, designed the carbon neutrality plan for the entire state of California, and our battery storage systems are now standard in every Tesla facility. Uncle David was still examining the property deed, turning it over as if looking for evidence that it was somehow fake. But Samantha, you live in that warehouse, you drive that old car. I live modestly because I believe in practicing what I preach about environmental responsibility, I replied. The warehouse is actually our research and development facility. It's completely off-grid, powered by renewable energy, and serves as a living laboratory for sustainable technologies. The revelation was creating a wave of shocked murmurs throughout the ballroom. Family members were whispering urgently to each other, trying to process this complete reversal of everything they thought they knew about me. There's more you should know, I continued, reaching for another section of the portfolio. Horizon Environmental Solutions has been the silent partner behind several Morrison Holdings projects over the past 5 years. I turned to Bradley. The pharmaceutical plant expansion that increased your profits by $200 million? We designed the waste management systems that made it environmentally compliant. The office complex that won the Green Building of the Year award? Our team created those energy systems. Bradley's face had gone pale. The Morrison Green Initiative. That was you? That was us, I confirmed. We've been helping Morrison Holdings transition to sustainable practices while maintaining profitability. Your carbon footprint has decreased by 60% over 5 years while your profits increased by 40%. Uncle David was slowly sinking back into his chair, the property deed still clutched in his trembling hands. Samantha, this says your company is worth. Forbes estimated our valuation at $4.1 billion last quarter, I replied matter-of-factly. But I'm more proud of the fact that our technologies have prevented over 50 million tons of carbon from entering the atmosphere. The ballroom had gone completely quiet now. 40 people who had just witnessed what they thought was a family intervention had instead seen one of the most dramatic reversals any of them would ever experience. I need to tell you something else, I continued, looking around the table at my family members. Horizon Environmental Solutions has been financially supporting several Morrison family projects without you knowing it. Uncle David's real estate empire had been struggling during the pandemic. The anonymous investor who provided the $50 million bailout that saved your commercial properties? That was Horizon Environmental Solutions. We did it because I didn't want to see the family business fail. Uncle David's face went through several color changes as he processed this information. Cousin Amanda, when your Southeast Division needed capital for expansion, who do you think provided that development loan? Cousin Michael, your pharmaceutical research grant that led to the breakthrough diabetes treatment. That funding came from the Horizon Foundation. The weight of these revelations was settling over the family like a heavy blanket. People who had spent 8 years pitying me were discovering that I had been supporting them. But why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Why let us worry about your future? I looked around the table at the family members who had spent the evening making me feel inadequate. Because every time I tried to explain environmental technology or sustainability consulting, you dismissed it as activist nonsense or impractical idealism. You had already decided that success only looked one way, your way. Uncle David finally found his voice again, though it came out as barely a whisper. Samantha, I owe you an enormous apology. We all do. I love this family, I replied, which is why I've been supporting you in ways you never knew about. But I can't continue pretending to be less than I am just to make you comfortable with your assumptions about success. I stood up and gathered my portfolio. Tomorrow I have a company to run, technologies to develop, and a planet to help save. If you're interested in learning about what I actually do, about the work we're doing to create a sustainable future, then we can have real conversations. As I prepared to leave, Uncle David called out one final time. Samantha, what happens to Willowbrook Estate? I turned back with a smile. We're converting it into the Morrison Center for Sustainable Innovation. It will be a research facility, educational center, and demonstration site for environmental technologies. And it will honor our family's name while building the kind of future our children deserve. Walking out of Willowbrook Estate, my estate now, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Tomorrow, I would continue the work of saving the planet while building a business empire that proved environmental responsibility and financial success weren't mutually exclusive. Some disappointments, it turns out, are just solutions that nobody bothered to understand.